Okay, today we're gonna get this axle out on this 04 STi. The boot is ripped over there. So to get the axle out, we're gonna have to remove the axle nut. We're not gonna touch anything on the suspension to not change our alignment. We're just gonna remove the tie rod here and the ball joint at the bottom. So first thing, 32 millimeter on this lug nut. You can take an impact, big one if you have one, and remove this 32 mm nut. Then take a pair of needle nose plier, sorry. Get the pin, put it out, and we'll cut this. We're going to do the same at the bottom for the ball joint. Remove the second pin. Next step is to remove the nuts. So 19 mil impact. Here's one. And then down there. Okay. So to remove the tie rod, we use this tool. Many versions on Amazon. Just slide it there without hitting the boot. And here, take your 19 mil impact. Okay, make sure you are just above the stud. And comes out. Now it is. And we're gonna do the same thing for the ball joint here. So same thing here, 19 mil on the tool for the ball joint. Up. Spinning the right way. Okay. Ball joint is separated. You can see sometimes the cone stays attached to it. There is a cone insert in there in the control arm. Sometimes it stays attached to the ball joint, sometimes it separates, like here. So now we just have to press the control arm down to get the whole assembly to slide out. Okay, so here I'm going to pry down on the control arm, and when the control arm is down, I can get, you can see here, the ball joint out. So now we are separated. So if the control arm is too hard to pry down, here you can loosen the nut on this side, and here there is a bolt over here with the nut that is inside here. If you loosen that, the control arm is just going to fall off, and then you won't have to pry. You might have to disconnect your sway bar because the sway bar is still going to try to push back on the control arm. But otherwise, if you just loosen both sides, that's going to make the control arm much easier to move. Now here I'm just holding with one hand the axle, and I'm putting the suspension on the side. So here, this way my suspension remains all attached with the alignment, nothing has moved. When I'm going to put it back in, our alignment is good right away. So now, depending whether you have male or female axles, if you have a male axle, you can just take a prior bar and pry it from the gearbox and pull it out. Here we have female axles, so there is a pin going to go under the car and push the pin out. So here you can see that's where the boot is ripped. That's why we're removing the axle. So here I'm just going to take my punch with a hammer. I push it through. It's a little spring. It's here. And now I just have to push the axle this way and it just comes out. Now we are going to repair the axle, change the boot, and put it back in. Okay, so first thing is to remove the boot. So different kinds of clamps. This one is a simple Orion clamp. So here I open the tabs, then just release, open, and then it comes out. Here we have a different kind of clamp. I'm gonna turn it so that you can see it. So that's your typical axle boot clamp. So here I'm gonna go through the opening here, twist it open if I can. There we go. Now I can get my pliers through there to make them flat again. And now that it's like this, I can pull on it to release it. Okay. So the way you put those back in is once you get them to grip, there's a special pair of clamps to squeeze that down to make them tight. Okay, so now this boot here, I can extract it. So here inside the inside here, there is just a retaining clip that we can grab here, you see, with a hook. Once you remove this retaining clip, you can pull the clip out. So the balls are going to fall off. There are 6 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay. So make sure you keep them aside and you don't lose them. There's going to be a ton of grease if your axle didn't spit all the grease out already. So here I clean up with a rag, and just at the end here there's a snap ring that is holding the edge there. So there we go. So here we got the snap ring out. When the snap ring is out, the rest here of the assembly is going to slide out. It should. There we go. It did slide out. So we'll clean all that up after, and now you can remove the boot. If you have to change the outer boot, you have to remove that side first. So what we did, even if that boot is good, you will have to get it out so that you can get to this boot and slide it all over the axle and put the new one in. So here we are lucky it was the inner. So we're just going to change this one and not touch that side of the axle. Okay, so we're going to put the new boot in here. Then after that, actually I have to clean that up first. So take a paper towel. The cage comes out. And the cage has a shape. If you look at it, it's conic. So you see it's tapered like this. And so it only goes one way. But here, the cage, you have to put the larger part, the larger opening. You see here, it's a smaller opening, here wider opening, the wider opening towards the outside. So here, if you look inside, one side is grooved like this, that the side is going to come toward the inside, and on the other side, you see there is no groove at all. You have the splines all the way. So this one comes this way, and now I'm going to be able to put my snap ring. Not enough to get it started. Let's try that again. There we go. So when it started like this, I can just use my screwdriver to push it in the groove, and it snaps in the groove. Perfect. So now I'm gonna repack this with grease, and I have to put my 6 balls back in. So first thing I'm gonna do is clean up the balls. So most boots will come with a kit with grease in it. Here we are reusing a used boot, so I'm gonna use fresh grease. I'm using the Redline CV2 axle grease. which is also what I use for my suspension. So here the trick is, if I'm putting the ball directly here, it's gonna fall off. Okay, so here I'm taking a ball. I'm gonna put it in the grease like this, and then put it in the hole and keep grease around to keep the ball in place. That's what prevents the ball from falling. So I'm starting from the top. So generous amount of grease here. Next one. Number 4. So the advantage of this heavy grease is that it's gonna hold the ball, I mean within reason. After a while they are gonna fall off, but for now you can see the ball here is staying in place just with the heavy grease. There we go. So here I'm gonna put some grease on the inside too. There we go. And so here, once you have cleaned up the inside of your half shaft here, so here I should have done that before because now I have a ball that fell off. So here I'm going to pre-grease the inside like this. Oh, my balls are falling because I should have done that before putting my balls on. I put some grease at the bottom. There we go. So now I just have to slide this in here. Perfect. I'm going to repack with grease on the inside before putting my circlip, my little last ring. Okay. So now it's all packed. The boot, actually my previous boot was already packed with grease, otherwise you could also put grease inside the boot, but here we already had grease. And here just have to take that clip, and here I'm gonna slide it in the groove on the inside here. Click, click, and if you did a good job, the clip is going to hold it in place, it cannot come out. Then now I just have to slide my boot over here. So now I'm going to clean all the excess grease from my hands and from the axle. There we go. I have some grease still, I tip it there, but I can finish that after. So here I'm gonna retighten this one. Those ones are easy. It's just pressing down here to tighten in place, then little hammer to put the tab down to hold it in place like this. Make sure your boot is in the groove here. There's a groove for the axle. You can see here just at the edge, the boot should be in there so that it's not gonna go any further. And now I can push my tabs down. This one. Here is 2. I'm gonna finish with the hammer here. There we go. And now the boot is changed and repaired, and we can put the axle back in the car. So when you put the axle back in the car, the hole for the pin is not centered. So it's slightly at an offset, so that means the axle is only going to go one way. If you tie one way and the pin doesn't go in, turn it 180 degrees and the pin is going to go in. Okay, so we're ready to put the axle back in. So here I'm going to try to align my axle with the hole. So we're gonna see if I was lucky and the spring is gonna go in. looks like we're lucky it's going in. Take my punch. Up, and I stop when it's flush. Here, perfect. So now we just have to put the axle back in the knuckle and the bearing over there. Okay, so here I'm gonna take the axle, put it back here. Have to be careful, there is a seal at the back of the bearing down here. So you don't want to hit the seal when you put the axle through, so just be careful. And if it doesn't align right away, you can just wiggle a bit. Up, that's our ball joint cone. So this should be staying in the controller. Make sure that doesn't fall off and you forget to put it back. It has to stay in the controller. So here, the axle is in. I'm gonna use my plier bar. Press it down. I have to come at an angle. We're gonna reattach here the tie rod. So here I'm gonna put my castle nut. Always start it by hand. And then you can take 19mm impact. Here we go. We'll put the quarter pins after. I'm gonna put here under the motherfucker. Ball joint. Okay. So here, same thing at the bottom. Actually, here I'm gonna put nut-lock washers on this one because it's really deep. There are nut-lock washers. If you don't know what they are, I'll put a link to a video to them. You should have that in every car that has a lot of vibration, especially rally cars. Will prevent you from losing the nuts. Okay. So I start with the impact, finish with the ratchet to align the hole for the pin. With my hole. So here you can see the hole is aligned. So now I can put my pin in. It's not completely straight, so I'm gonna have to help it. There we go, we're out. So I just bend it on each side. This. I'm gonna do the same with the tie rod here. Bend each side. Like this. There we go. Now I just have to put my 32mm nut back in. So here, I'm gonna put more. There we go. And at the end, when it's in, if you look here in the front, there is a groove in here. There's a square inside the axle here, and this is so that you can take a chisel like this and hit the nut so that now the nut is squeezed inside. So you can see here on a slightly a rusty one here. You have the groove. You have the groove of the axle, and the nut is pinched in.